Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Sweet Girl Undone, A Change of Heart Novella by Denise Swanson. Narrated by Samantha Summers. Chapter 1. Lucy Wheeler loved the beginning of school. It was full of possibilities. By the end of the school year, both she and her students were more than a little bit sick of each other. But the first day of classes was a clean slate, a chance for everyone to forget what had happened in the past and start off on a positive note. This time tomorrow, she'd be doing what she loved best, working with the kids who needed her the most. Lucy taught special education, one of the toughest teaching assignments in any school. And although it was challenging, if she did say so herself, she was darn good at it. Her classroom might be housed in a trailer sitting in the back parking lot. It might be hot in the summer and cold in the winter. And when the kids needed to use the bathroom, an aide might have to escort them into the main building. But despite the less than ideal environment, Lucy's pupils always made progress. So why wasn't she happy? Lucy bit the end of her ponytail. Why was she so restless? Granted, Cedar Vale, Illinois' population was only a shade over 4,000, which didn't lend itself to a lot of excitement. But that had never bothered her before. What was making her want to lock herself in her empty classroom and scream? Maybe it was the email schedule she'd just opened. Once again, Mr. Castle had assigned her the worst duties. It wasn't that the principal had it in for her, or was punishing her for some transgression, or even that he disliked her. It was because, unlike many of the others, he knew she wouldn't cause a fuss. Lucy stomped her foot and gave a squeak of pure frustration. She was sick of being taken for granted, sick of people thinking that they knew what was best for her, and sick of being the sweet one. Even in college, she'd been pigeonholed. When she'd pledged Alpha Sigma Alpha with her friends Sheridan Davis, Darcy Simmons, and Delaney Smallwood, they'd quickly been labeled the Four Seasons. Delaney was spring, ever hopeful and ready for a new beginning. Darcy was fall, crisp with a hint of sadness. Sheridan was winter, cool and a bit aloof. And Lucy was summer, easygoing and optimistic. But she wasn't that 18-year-old girl anymore, or at least she didn't want to be. It was time to break free from that role. It was time for a do-over. As she wrestled desks into place, a task the custodian should have completed but hadn't because he knew Lucy would cover for him, she rehearsed her conversation with the principal. "I'm sorry, Mr. Castle. Just because I team teach first period and my class has coverage doesn't mean it's fair to me and the students who need my help for me always to be assigned morning bus duty." Lucy frowned. No, she shouldn't apologize. She should just state her case. "Mr. Castle, just because I have the next hour as my planning period, it doesn't make it right that, for the 5th year in a row, you've assigned me to monitor the cafeteria during what should be my lunch." That was better. The principal's wife might be the head of the teachers' union, but he shouldn't be allowed to take away Lucy's contractual right for 20 minutes of peace to eat her peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Lucy slammed the remaining books onto the shelves, then marched toward the door. But in the few seconds it took her to reach the exit, doubts were already gnawing at her resolve. She paused with her hand on the knob, biting her lip. She didn't want to hurt Mr. Castle's feelings. He depended on her. Maybe she was overreacting to the extra duties. They weren't that bad. She was usually in class before roll call was over, and she could afford to lose a few pounds, so missing a meal was no big deal. Before she confronted the principal, she'd talked to Delaney. Her best friend taught 6th and 7th grade English and would be in the main building getting her own classroom in shape for the next day. Delaney's optimism was just what Lucy needed. No need to make a decision right this second. Everything would look better over a Dairy Queen blizzard with her BFF. Lucy found Delaney putting the final touches on her bulletin boards. After Lucy described her pressing need for a sugary indulgence, the two women strolled the 3 blocks to DQ. On the short walk between the school and the drive-in, Lucy told her friend about her agitation. Delaney listened intently, nodding her understanding, but didn't comment. Once they ordered their treat and claimed a picnic table under a shade tree, Lucy said, "So, what do you think?" "Although you definitely should tell King Castle that you've had enough of covering all the crappy extra duty assignments." Delaney dug into her cotton candy blizzard. "I somehow doubt that's what's really bothering you." "Oh?" Lucy picked a piece of crushed brownie out of her cup and popped it into her mouth. "Then what is?" "You tell me." Delaney tucked a caramel-colored curl behind her ear. "I feel twitchy," Lucy complained, "like I'm waiting for something to happen." "Something good?" Delaney tilted her head. "Or something bad?" "Either." Lucy's stomach fluttered. "Just something different." "How long has it been since you broke up with Harry Easton?" Delaney's honey-colored eyes softened. 6 months, right? "Closer to 8, Lucy corrected. "He dumped me before Christmas." "What a cheap-ass jerk. He probably just didn't want to have to buy you a gift." Delaney's nails beat out an angry tattoo on the table. "And you haven't dated anyone since then?" Lucy shook her head. "You need a man," Delaney pronounced, then shoved a huge bite of pink soft serve into her mouth. "What about you?" Lucy pointed her red plastic spoon at Delaney. "You haven't gone out with anyone in at least a year, maybe more. And I don't want to. After witnessing my parents' dysfunctional marriage and that abusive creep I fell for in college, I'm not eager to dive into those waters." Delaney wiped her lips with a paper napkin. "But you believe in love and happily ever after. Your folks have had more than 30 years of wedded bliss. Their good example has gotten your biological clock ticking." "Maybe," Lucy admitted slowly, then sighed her frustration. "But there's not exactly a smorgasbord of eligible men in Cedarvale." "True," Delaney scraped the last nuggets of candy from the sides of her cup. "Most men over 25 seem to be married or bitterly divorced." "So then, who do you suggest I date?" Lucy huffed, crossing her arms. "Are there any new single male teachers in the district?" "Not in our building, but maybe at the high school?" Delaney answered, "although even if there are, those guys never last more than a year." "Unless you grow up in a small town, it's hard to adjust to the slower pace." Lucy defended the folks who couldn't take rural living. "And people around here aren't always welcoming to newcomers." "Instead of trying to figure out who's available, let's figure out what kind of man you're looking for," Delaney suggested. "Okay," Lucy bit her lip. "First and foremost, I want someone who's real." "Versus Batman?" Delaney joked. "Seriously?" Lucy rolled her eyes. "What I meant is not some muscle-bound gorilla who spends all his waking moments bulking up at the gym and admiring himself in every mirror he passes." "Okay," Delaney grinned. "Then Arnold Schwarzenegger is out." "Someone sincere," Lucy wrinkled her brow, ignoring Delaney's teasing, "who isn't just interested in making money to buy the latest toys." "Not Mark Zuckerberg." Delaney made an air checkmark. "Anything else?" "Compassion," Lucy said slowly. "A man who can empathize with those less fortunate." "Basically, you want a nice guy." Delaney stroked her chin. "That's tall order." "Yep, which is why I'm dateless in Cedarvale." Lucy blew out an exasperated breath, then asked, "What do you want in a man?" Delaney closed her eyes. "If I were looking for a husband, and I'm not, I'd like someone with a bit of sophistication, someone willing to live in a small town, but with experiences outside of it." What would he look like? Lucy was intrigued. Her friend rarely talked about what kind of man she'd be interested in. Delaney always claimed that she was fine with her book boyfriends. She said that Mr. Darcy or Rhett Butler or the U.S. Marshal named Jake from her favorite mystery series would never let her down. "I'd like a nice chest and broad shoulders." Delaney's honey-colored eyes were dreamy. "And a great butt would be nice." "A young Cary Grant?" Lucy offered. They both were old movie buffs and agreed that they weren't attracted to most of the male stars of their own age, that those guys lacked the polish and savoir-faire that the men in the 40s and 50s possessed. Or even a young Hugh Grant, without the predilection for prostitutes, Delaney snickered. "Yeah," Lucy nodded. "His behavior was sure a disappointment." After a few seconds to mourn the fact that Hugh Grant had turned out to be a pervert, Lucy asked, "What about your ideal guy's character?" "I'd like a man who has had to overcome obstacles in his past." Delaney's voice grew huskier as she explained. "If everything has come too easily, you aren't able to handle it when life throws you a curveball. If you've never had any heartache, the tendency is to give up and move on rather than fight for your happiness." I never thought of it like that. Lucy was a little shocked to hear her friend's views. She'd always thought of Delaney as optimistic, but clearly there was a darker side to her BFF. The two women were silent for several minutes. Then Delaney snapped her fingers and said, "I just figured out the perfect guy for you." "Oh, then why haven't we thought of this paragon of virtue before?" Lucy didn't like the look on her friend's face. "Is he already taken?" "Only by God," Delaney beamed. "You don't mean Reverend Curtis?" "No!" Lucy shook her head. "I dated him in college and it didn't work out." She and Curt had grown up together. Both of their fathers were farmers and their mothers stayed home to raise their children. Lucy and Curt had been classmates since kindergarten, but hadn't acknowledged their attraction until near the end of their senior year of high school. At first, Lucy had been so happy, as if she'd finally found that missing piece in her life. But once they had gone off to different colleges, Curt had changed. Lucy's stomach hurt thinking about his withdrawal. He'd visited her less and less. Her texts to him had gone unanswered. And when they were together, he'd almost seemed embarrassed to be with her. "Whatever happened between you two?" Delaney's expression was remorseful. "I remember you stopped seeing him during the time I was trying to get away from my stalker boyfriend. But I was so unhinged by that guy, I was too self-absorbed to ask you about Curt." "I'm not sure." Lucy shrugged, her chest aching at the memory. "Part of it was geographic. His school was over 2 hours away from ours." She chewed her thumbnail. "And part of it was that I never felt like I ever had his full attention. We'd be together, but he wasn't focused on me. He wasn't focused on us." "Was he distracted by his studies?" Delaney asked. "College was tough." "Maybe." Lucy's throat tightened. "But I think it was more that he was preoccupied with becoming a perfect minister. He was afraid to show his human side." She shook her head. "He was just so damn serious." "What do you think of him now that he's back in town?" Delaney asked. "Curt took over for our previous minister, 3 years ago?" 4. Lucy shook her head. "We've both been in Cedar Vale for the past 4 years, and he's never sought me out. He barely speaks to me." "But are you still interested in him?" Delaney persisted.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?